Hey yogis, Josie here. Welcome to the YogaLocal podcast. This week I'm going to just chat to you a little bit about our theme, which is be generous, generosity. It's the whole conversation of what it is to give and receive, and really realizing that they're really the two sides of the same coin. And when we can start to get that balance right, and really remember that we're innately generous, and when we understand that it's usually the ego that's concerned for just ourselves, and the fear of lack and missing out that stops us from tapping into this idea that nature is naturally generous, we are naturally generous, and then when we start to understand that, we can let go. We can let go of our grasping. We can let go of our fear that everything's going to run out. We're not going to get our share. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about this topic. Maybe explore some of the three signs of pure generosity. So we know when the generosity is balanced, when it's supportive, when it's not bankrupting us. When we can really start to ask questions of ourselves that help us to understand where our giving is coming from, and how much should I give, and also where am I holding back. Okay, so these are all things that we cover in practice as we're moving through an asana practice. Because there's a lot of giving and receiving to ourselves in practice. And last week I was encouraging you to really take what you need, and starting to remember that we are part of this infinite pool of energy, wisdom, information, and healing. And when we start to open up to that wisdom, then we start to receive and become benefactors of that energy and that information and that wisdom. And your practice, your physical practice, is starting to calm the mind, getting into a place of readiness to be able to take on these truths, and your body being strong enough and capable enough and purified and fortified, so that we again can hold ourselves for an amount of time which allows these wisdoms to become a living embodied experience, right? If we're racing through practice, if our minds are super busy and occupied still, if we're not listening, if we're not honoring ourselves and starting to give ourselves time and space to actually receive the feedback of the body, to notice our energy levels, to witness when it might be out of balance, yoga is not yoga. Our practice is not giving us what it promises. So I want you to think about how generous you are. I mean, last week this was kind of where I was going with it, because often we're not generous with our presence. We're not generous to ourselves with our presence and with our breath. Okay, we're just trying to get more done, pack more in, and just keep driving, thinking more and more adds up to a bigger, better experience. And this is not what the yoga tradition is telling us. We need to get steady. We need to purify the body. We need to calm the mind and come to a place where we can receive that feedback that innately we are generous. We're part of nature. Nature is naturally giving. Nothing is hoarded in nature. If we hold on to our breath, it's a really clear sign that we are not meant to hold on to something, right? It's uncomfortable, and at some point we've got to let that go. And finding that reciprocity, finding that natural flow of giving and receiving, of being able to be generous. So what gets in the way if we're so kind of innately generous? What gets in the way? Well, it's fear. It's the ego sense of self protecting itself, because it worries, right? It worries that there's not enough, and there won't be if we're constantly giving. Where's my share? We've got to start to tame the ego and watch those ego conversations that really sabotage our desire to be more giving, and to offer what we have to offer. It's really a simple practice, but it's also not easy. So that's why we practice. So we've got to disentangle the mind and start to just move past that busyness. The train of thoughts are coming and going, getting in the way of our deep sense of knowing that, it feels good to be generous. We're happy when we're able to be generous. We're happy when we're able to offer the innate skills and the qualities that we have and make someone else's experience of life a little better, right? So practicing generosity is basically this antidote, really, to selfishness and also fear of loss. It's going to start testing our sense of abundance. It's going to start testing this wisdom and this worldview that that life is naturally abundant and that we are connected to that abundant field of energy, wisdom, healing, information. So start to notice this in your practice. Start to witness where the ego is sort of interfering with that innate desire in you to be more giving and also to receive. Like, it's not just in that giving of yourself, it's also being able to receive. And a lot of us struggle with receiving, and again, that's all tied to mind stuff again and ego stuff, like those thoughts. Well, actually, I don't deserve that, and I'm not worthy. We've come into a negative mindset which blocks out abundance. It blocks out that flow of abundance towards us. So we can start to, in a safe place, give ourselves that gift of generosity, of our presence. Be with the breath, hold posture steady, let the mind stabilize, feel our inner strength when we're holding those postures, right? and start to really witness some truths, which, again, all coming from that place of connectivity. When we're more connected to the wisdom, right, we're going to get those downloads. We're going to start to understand a little bit more where we're kind of going wrong, where we may be overly giving and bankrupting ourselves, where we're not receiving, where we're putting walls up, where our ego is getting in the way and telling us stories, telling us that, if we give, we're going to get hurt, or we're going to lose something, or we're going to look silly, or we're going to get ripped off, and also getting in the way is the ego's kind of desire to look for, well, if I'm going to give, there's got to be a payoff, right? There's got to be some reward. So all these things keep showing up. It says it's natural push-pull, wanting to be generous, but then feeling that sense of lack and fear. And when we're committed to understanding who we are and how our limitations hold us back, it's kind of curious, right? I find it really fascinating when you get still enough, when you really allow yourself to notice how you operate and what's getting in the way of you expressing who you are fully, wholly, and being fully generous. You can then start to unpick, you can start to disentangle, you can start to witness the mind. It's just this constant reel of noise, which is just in the foreground, and we need to get to the background. We need to get into that place of awareness, like true awareness, and quiet down that reel, that constant reel, that fear wheel, that wheel of anxiety, that wheel of thought, that train of thought that just constantly doubts and worries. And then from that place, we can start to be generous from a place that is inspired. It's an inspired sense of giving that goes beyond the ego. It's strong enough, so strong, so connected, that it can blast through all those complaints that the ego says, right? Like, tell me in the comments if you've had moments like that where it's kind of like, right, just have it all. There's no sense of need for yourself. There's no payoff required. There's no demand from the ego. It's just been flowing out from you to give in a certain situation. That's the kind of generosity that we're talking about, because it comes from knowing that you're connected and life is essentially abundant. You know, there's more where that came from, so let's just give it freely. And also recognizing that in order to give, we also need to receive. So looking for those moments where you're putting up walls, where you're not taking that support, where you're maybe backing off and not fully able to accept the generosity of someone else or the situation. You know, in order for things to flow, we have to be both givers and receivers, right? It's like the giving and the receiving of the breath, both. We need both. So be this conduit of energy, be this conduit of information, be this conduit of healing, knowing that in giving you're also receiving, right? That's kind of how I take the teachings. So yeah, 3 signs of generosity. Is it coming from a place of inspiration that can overcome your ego's concerns? Okay. Is it balanced? You know, are you giving and receiving? You know, is there any area in your practice and in your life where you're overdoing and not taking back? You know, those practices where you're just powering through, getting more and more fierce, the breath goes, and you're not giving yourself those moments in between the postures just to stay, just to be, just to receive, just to notice the energy, to notice things change, to notice the mind shift. Okay, it's not all about adding more energy, adding more fuel, right? We need to tend to that fire. We need to make sure that it's not becoming overly inflamed. We can become overly inflamed if we're not bringing that balance of working, finding our edge, touching on things that maybe start to give us, you know, something to think about, like they provoke. And that's a natural part of practice. We want to provoke, we want to stir things up so that we can deal with them and dissolve them. But if we just, you know, keep like adding on more flames, we are not going to be able to step back, right? To step back and truly witness the effects of working with our energetic body, the effects of stabilizing the mind. You know, we're just going to be in a state of agitation, overly inflamed, overly agitated. So yeah, important to start to explore how you practice and how you give to yourself in practice those moments of calm coupled with those moments of provocation, and not exaggerating into either or to the point where there's imbalance. Okay, because equally we can get too into the, you know, our grounding practice, and the balance will shift into something that's grounded and stable, into something that's lazy, inert, fatigued, depressed, right? There's always that balance. So where is the balance? Where are we giving? Where are we receiving? How do we optimize and get ourselves to a place where we can be completely generous to ourselves and to others? So generosity, let's start to explore this more. Hopefully this has whetted your appetite a little bit. It's the season of giving, it's the season of receiving, you know. So let's explore this topic, let's understand ourselves, and let's see if we can up level throughout this time of giving, and really show up in the world just as we're meant to, as nature intended. Okay, so let me know if you've got any comments. I'd love to continue this conversation, and I will see you in class. Bye for now.